Okay, folks. So I like to use this figure. There's every book's got their own figure showing calcium homeostasis, and this isn't the one in the McGraw book, but we'll show you that one in the next slide. But the idea here is homeostasis. So remember, homeostasis is keeping some condition in the body constant or relatively constant. In this case, it's calcium levels in the bloodstream. So calcium is a vital mineral, not just for bones, but for a lot of other important processes in your body. And we're going to talk about those as the semester goes on, but um, other than, strengthening bone and teeth, you need calcium for proper muscle function. So both cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and skeletal muscle all requires calcium for their function. Um, Blood clotting, we'll talk about blood clotting in AMP2. It requires calcium. A lot of enzymatic reactions require calcium. So you have to be able to have enough in the bloodstream at all times. You'll notice that there's a range here, or a number they give, about 10 milligrams per 100 milliliters of blood. All right, so that's a normal calcium level. Now, I'm not going to hold you to that number, but we need to know that there's some normal amount of calcium. This figure, you go one of two ways. You either start on this side, okay, and here's the stimulus being raising blood calcium levels. So for some reason, you have too much calcium in your bloodstream. Now, what could cause that? Well, it could be, consumption of too much calcium. One way to do that very easily is taking too much supplements, taking too much calcium supplements, or even taking a multivitamin, but in excess. Another thing that has a lot of calcium in it are Rolaids or buffers. So people take these for heartburn. Well, those heartburn buffers often have calcium. So if you're taking excessive amounts of those, you could have high calcium. So we're not going to get into reasons, but for some reason you have high calcium. All right, what that's going to do is it's going to stimulate the thyroid gland. So this drawing is your thyroid gland. Your thyroid gland is in your neck, and one function of that thyroid is to produce a hormone called calcitonin. All right, so that's the hormone, one of the two hormones we're going to talk about. Calcitonin is produced by your thyroid gland if you have high calcium levels. We often call that hypercalcemia. All right, calcium is going to have two main targets. All right, one are bones. All right, so it's going to cause calcium to be deposited more in your bones. All right, so that should make sense, right? That'll bring down calcium levels. The other target is your kidneys. So it's going to cause your kidneys to reduce the amount of calcium it keeps in the body. Said another way, it's going to cause your kidneys to excrete calcium. So you'll have more calcium going into your urine. All right. So calcitonin is produced when you have high calcium levels, and it's produced by your thyroid gland. The opposite would be if you have low calcium. So what might cause that? Inadequate consumption, right, of dietary calcium. You're not getting enough of it in your diet. Now that stimulus is going to stimulate a different gland. Now it looks similar, but we're not talking about this purple area. We're talking about these little round guys. Those are called parathyroid glands. Those are four little glands that are embedded inside of your thyroid. All right, and this is kind of the posterior view. They tend to stick out the back of the thyroid. Those glands produce a different hormone called parathyroid hormone, or PTH. That hormone has the opposite effect on blood calcium. So it's produced when you have low calcium, or hypocalcemia. Its job is to raise calcium. So the question is, how does it do it? One target are bones. So it's going to stimulate calcium release from the bones. But think about who. Who is it going to stimulate? it's going to stimulate the osteoclasts. All right. So that's one function. You stimulate the osteoclasts, they break down bone matrix and release calcium into your bloodstream. Second target is the kidneys. So it's going to cause the kidneys to increase calcium uptake, meaning keep calcium in the body. Don't put it in urine. All right. It's also going to tell the kidneys to synthesize more vitamin D. All right. So vitamin D can be ultimately produced by kidneys. Now it does require skin and UV light, but kidneys are at the root of this production of vitamin D. So you tell the kidneys to produce more vitamin D. Well, what does vitamin D do? Well, vitamin D goes to your small intestines and increases the calcium absorption from your diet. So now maybe you're not getting enough calcium, but at least you're getting as much as you possibly can absorbed into your body. All right. So this is one of these tricky topics that you want to spend a little more time on. All right. It's calcium homeostasis using two different hormones. All right. One to lower calcium and one to raise calcium. If they're working properly, you will maintain calcium. We'll revisit these hormones in AMP2. So if you know them really well now, it's two less hormones you got to relearn about in AMP2. All right. And whenever we have two hormones doing the opposite thing, we call that antagonistic hormones. One's going to raise, the other one's going to lower. Together, you maintain homeostasis. This is the new book's version of that. So it's the same principle. We're looking at calcium homeostasis. They go about it a little different. So again, you can kind of start here. They show calcium levels going up. All right. So what are we going to do when homeostasis is disturbed and calcium goes up? Well, we're going to target the thyroid gland. So there's the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland's going to produce calcitonin. Calcitonin's going to inhibit the osteoclasts and help deposit calcium into the bones. All right. Now, unfortunately, this book doesn't talk about, kidneys, but kidneys are going to get rid of calcium. Here, we're going to then start over here for parathyroid, and we see calcium levels go down. That disrupts homeostasis. Now we use the parathyroid glands to produce parathyroid hormone, which does three things. It's going to activate calcitriol. Okay, there's a new word. Look at that calcitriol. That's active vitamin D. All right, that's another name for active vitamin D, is calcitriol. So we produce calcitriol, aka vitamin D. It's going to help us absorb calcium. So there's our little small intestines. We're going to reabsorb calcium, meaning we're going to keep calcium in the body. So we tell the kidneys. And then we're going to stimulate the osteoclasts to release calcium into your bloodstream. All right. So that's calcitonin and parathyroid working together to maintain calcium levels. Here's a little kind of table showing the major players: parathyroid, calcitriol, again, vitamin D, and calcitonin is the hormone from the thyroid. Okay, basically we're going to wrap up this chapter by looking at all the things that might influence bone growth and bone health. All right, so notice this slide is all about minerals and vitamins. All right, there's a number of vitamins and minerals you need in your diet to help maintain nice, healthy bones. So let's just go over and highlight some of the key ones. So calcium and phosphorus, right? They're the majority of the bone matrix. So they're going to make sure you have, nice, healthy, strong bone matrix. Some other minerals, magnesium, fluoride, manganese, are also important. But typically we think of that calcium and phosphorus, number one. All right, vitamins. Now, vitamins, we want to make sure we pay close attention. Vitamin A is needed for the activity of the osteoblasts. All right, so in order to keep those osteoblasts building bone efficiently, we need adequate amounts of vitamin A. All right. Vitamin C, I want you to think C for collagen. Vitamin C is a needed vitamin for the production of collagen. So now we got to have that collagen for flexibility. All right. Vitamin D, we already learned. All right. Active form is called calcitriol, produced by kidneys, helps build bone by increasing absorption of calcium from your GI tract. All right, vitamin D. Finally, vitamin K and B12. These are needed for protein synthesis. I wouldn't worry too much about those. I'm really going to ask you about vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin D, as well as the minerals calcium and phosphorus. All right. So diet. Diet is a huge player in maintaining nice, healthy bones. Here's a couple conditions. Vitamin D deficiencies can lead to rickets in children. So rickets is specifically when it's deficiency in children. Notice these bones start to bow. All right, so that's a vitamin D deficiency. It could lead to osteoporosis as well. Notice that in osteoporosis, what really is affected is the spongy bone. All right, spongy bone is more sensitive to osteoporosis. Normal bone, there's those nice trabeculae. Notice in the osteoporotic bone, it dissolves and you get these larger kind of pockets and spaces. The scariest area is this femur. So the femur has what's called the neck. And if osteoporosis forms in that femur can fracture very easily. A lot of times we hear the phrase, grandma fell and broke her hip. That's usually not what happened. Usually grandma broke her femur, and then that's what caused her to fall. Okay? So the femur breaks and then she falls. This is kind of on that topic of osteoporosis. I'm not going to go crazy here, but notice all the things that could contribute to osteoporosis. The big ones, again, are deficiencies in calcium, vitamin D, lack of exercise is a big... if you exercise, those bones will know that they have to get stronger. All right, so a lot of things contribute and are affected by osteoporosis. Okay, last kind of things are some hormones. All right, we already talked about the big two being parathyroid hormone and calcitonin. But there's growth factor, all right, human growth factor, HGH, extremely important in growth of bones. We won't talk about the insulin-like growth factors, but your thyroid hormones are very important in normal bone growth. Insulin's important. We won't get into that. But notice the sex hormones. So sex hormones cause growth spurts. And, we probably remember our growth spurts, or you have children that went through growth spurts. But that's, estrogen and testosterone. But those hormones are also important during adulthood. We don't want to forget about that. A lot of times the levels of estrogen and testosterone drop as we age. When a woman enters menopause, her estrogen production goes down dramatically. In males, it's a little slower, but males, as we age, testosterone drops. And these hormones help promote bone health. So as we age, we need to be, conscious and aware of, the loss of these stimulating hormones for bone growth and bone health. So as far as hormones, focus on knowing calcitonin and parathyroid, as well as the sex hormones, and we'll get to growth hormone another day as well. Exercise. So weight-bearing activities stimulate osteoblasts. So that's another thing that helps maintain nice, strong, healthy bones is weight-bearing activities. And then I don't like to talk about aging because aging stinks. But aging is just a process that's going to, make everything kind of become worse. And aging is a huge risk factor for weaker bones and osteoporosis. But there's a lot we can do, but you got to start doing those things early in life to help prevent osteoporosis later in life. All right, last thing, we'll get into this more in A&P2, but growth hormone, there are some disorders. So overproduction of growth hormone early in life can lead to gigantism. All right, so if overproduction of this hormone occurs before the growth plates fuse, the bones will still grow in length. Acromegaly is an adult onset of high growth hormone. So the bones have already stopped growing in length, but what happens is some of them will thicken. The jaw thickens, the fingers thicken. So this is when there's high growth hormone as an adult. And then opposite, lack of or low growth hormone production can cause what's known as pituitary dwarfism, because the pituitary gland is what produces growth hormone. Okay, that should bring us to the end of this chapter. Best of luck studying this chapter. Let me know if there's any topics that you are struggling with.